It's a pleasure to be here and to present to this very cool digital conference. Let's start with the slides, right? So I need to do like that, right? I don't have any confirmation that is working, but I guess everything is fine. So hello again. My name is Jovan. I'm CEO and co-founder of Chinoyo. Chinoyo is a digital health tech, actually security and health tech startup applied to digital health. So at Chinoyo, we help health tech developers and digital health developers on building their health apps and managing their health data in compliance with the data protection laws and security standards. So today I will tell briefly about my bio and why Chinoyo, and then I will continue with the discussion about our experience on GDPR and health applications, why it's important, what it is, and so on. And then I will give you a brief summary about available technologies out there, some tips and tricks for developers on which technologies to use, since we are a tech company and we have seen this very, very closely in the last 4 years. So briefly about myself, I graduated at the University of Trento in the Alps in Italy, and then started working with doing my PhD with the companies in the healthcare sector. And then after my PhD in 2014, we started the entrepreneurial path with a friend of mine and founded Chinoyo to help, again, digital health startups on security and privacy topics. When we started in 2014, there were like 165,000 health apps. Now there are almost double, probably even more now. It's a really fast growing market. And we know that all those apps are collecting and storing and sharing health sensitive data. And studies from 2014, which have continued also in the last years, have shown that those apps, 85% approximately, have some issues with privacy, security, and compliance with data protection laws. So that's why we started Chinoyo. So those news, 2014, 15, 16, always summarizing and analyzing how health apps suffer privacy and security problems. But why, why this is important? Why privacy and security is important? Many people think about it like as a risk for lawyers to be sued and so on. But actually, from my practical experience with startups and developers, security and compliance is more important for your customers and for your partners. We know that in healthcare we have multiple stakeholders. All of them are involved in decision making, in accepting, buying your solution, health solution, hospitals, insurance, pharma. So those companies are really tough on security and compliance. They want only to use trusted solutions and good solutions. So it's important for your partners, your users, who are more and more aware about privacy. It's important for lawyers to get approval and policies and terms and conditions in order to go to the market, but it's also important later on to demonstrate if you screw up, bad things happen. So if something happens, you need to demonstrate that. You need to demonstrate to data protection authorities, to investors who want to invest in good products, in good startups. And you need also to demonstrate this at random events and to random people who are going to ask you tough questions. So as a digital health startup, you need to be privacy and security expert. So what is GDPR? We have seen on the 25th of May and a couple of days before, we received all thousands of emails. We have read all about news, about articles about GDPR, but what is really GDPR for digital health? My opinion in the work with startups and companies, digital health, is that GDPR is great because now when startups and companies are going to say, I'm GDPR compliant, that means that they're going to solve all those questions about security and privacy for the whole European market and even worldwide, because we know that GDPR became really famous also outside Europe, in America, for example. they were really scared about GDPR. So you will be able to sell your services as a digital health company across Europe and worldwide. And GDPR will be the acronym for good practices. Remember that GDPR is designed for users and not, for companies, but it's designed to give rights and freedom and privacy rights to users. This will help, GDPR will help also to create more knowledge and share more knowledge and to teach to experts to be more uniform about about requirements, what needs to be implemented. And there will be more and more services which will help companies to be GDPR compliant and privacy compliant. So that's also good. That similar to HIPAA in US, which created a lot of services. But GDPR is bad now because there are still a lot of misunderstandings, and this is, however, this will be temporal because this will be clarified in the next months and so on. Guidelines will be published, but then it's bad because national laws will still exist for health tech startups. So national laws will still impose requirements and obligations, and technical aspects will be governed by other bodies. So GDPR doesn't define how technical implementation needs to be done on single requirements. So GDPR is a bit still higher level. It's general, it's not a technical solution. So, for example, the problem on national laws that I was mentioning. So Germany, France, Italy, Poland, all of those countries have some specificities in their national laws. So national laws will be still still valid, still there, even with the GDPR, especially for sensitive health data. So European Commission is working on this quite slowly, but the digital single market is an objective. So let's push European Commission also to eliminate this barrier for developers. I always like to compare GDPR and HIPAA, the European and the US data protection law for healthcare, even though, again, GDPR is not only healthcare, but when we focus only on digital health, if we compare them, they are quite similar. GDPR stressed and introduced new aspects like right to be forgotten, data portability, and so on, which are not really explicitly stated in HIPAA, but overall, HIPAA and GDPR are really similar laws. And they have administrative or organizational measures, they have technical measures, and they have physical measures regarding the physical cloud computing, for example, or physical servers of your application. And those technical are the most complex aspects, and those are the ones that are only high level, described on a high level in GDPR. So if we consider right to be forgotten, data portability, data encryption, API security, authentication, those are the technical aspects that when I talk to companies and to startups and developers, those are the aspects that they need to develop, and those are the aspects that they need to know how to develop. And this is the most complex aspect because the administrative aspects can be solved with the lawyers and consultants. The physical aspects can be solved by cloud offering because now cloud computing solves those issues, but the technical work needs to be done by developers, by companies. So this is risky. If there is always the question if they did it right. Is the most costly aspect because security and compliance is not the expertise of digital health companies. That's why they are struggling with the complexity of requirements. And this is also the most time-consuming aspect. Time to build, consult, document, and then update over the time. So the question is how and where startups and companies need to look for help. So this is a description about what are a summary of what are the available solutions out there and what startups and companies can do to solve to help themselves and what they should choose as solutions for their products. So On the left side, we have dedicated hosting. For example, Hetzner is one of the most famous dedicated hosting provider in Europe. This kind of providing, this kind of offers, they help you only on physical security. You will be in charge on the infrastructure. You will be in charge of the platform. So infrastructure means your virtual machines and your setup of virtual machines. They will provide you only the physical place where this is stored. Then platform security, where your code is executed. Application security, how your application is implemented. Data security, how data is encrypted and transferred. And then governance, risk, and compliance is more administrative aspect. So if you use dedicated hosting, you will be in charge for the most of those aspects. You are the developer, you will be in charge of that. If you use more visualized solutions like infrastructure as a service, those typical Amazon, AWS, or Google Cloud, or IBM, etc., those companies will manage partially the infrastructure security, but you will be responsible still of the platform, application, data, and governance. So they solve a lot, they help you a lot, but still you have a lot to do to achieve the full compliance and security. Platform as a service like Google App Engine or Heroku are those platform as a service providers. So they are PaaS. They are platform as a service provider, and they will provide you the platform, but typically they do not provide guarantees about HIPAA compliance for US, and therefore I don't suggest to companies also in Europe to use them, because that's HIPAA compliance is a guarantee about specific guarantees about security compliance. So if a provider is HIPAA compliant, that means that it can be used also in Europe, and that means that it's designed for healthcare. That gives you guarantees, not only technical, but also administrative and contractual guarantees for healthcare. So platform as a service, then we have backend as a service. Firebase, Google Firebase is the most famous one probably, and Chinoyo, our company, is one of those backend as a service providers. So we define clear liabilities, and we increase the responsibility, because backend as a service is a service that stores your data and that manages your users. So you have the APIs to manage user store data, and manage most of the aspects of your application. You will need to work on your algorithms, but those solutions are designed to outsource part of the tasks. And then you have software as a service, which is Salesforce or Gmail, or all those services are complete solutions. You just need to focus on a bit on governance and risk. They will take care about everything. And then there are solutions, especially in the healthcare sector. There are many solutions that provide hybrid. Many companies, startups providing hybrid solutions, like hybrid platforms or plugins that you can use to make your application compliant. Some of them are doing really great work and provide great help, but sometimes it's really hard to understand where is the border between your responsibility as a developer and their responsibility. So it's hard to understand sometimes this. So as a company, as a developer in digital health space, you need to take care about that. So just to give you, an example of what I was saying before about responsibility. So if you go to Amazon AWS and you check shared responsibility model diagram, it's something like that, like this one. This is a screenshot of their. So they will say that they are responsible for your security on the cloud, compute, storage, database, networking, but you will be responsible to the blue boxes about customer data, platform, application, identity, operating system, network, and then client-side data encryption, server-side data encryption, and so on. So as you can see here, there is still a lot of things that you need to do on your side to ensure compliance. So I try to summarize here with another picture the main things you need to do in an application and what different service providers provide. So for example, this is infrastructure as a service approach, so Amazon AWS approach. So You have the application, you have user management, you have health data, you have other data in your application, and there is on the bottom Amazon AWS who is supporting you in creating these applications. So you need to implement all those aspects and boxes in your application, all those user management and health data. And as we know, user management and health data is the most complex set of things that you need to do, most risky and costly aspects to achieve compliance and GDPR and HIPAA compliance. So platform as a service is something that provides more an envelope to your application. So PaaS gives you more. So remember, Google App Engine or Heroku are most famous platform providers. But again, they provide you, the Heroku and Google App Engine are not HIPAA compliant, and therefore they shouldn't be used for healthcare. Again, healthcare blocks is another HIPAA compliant and very specific solution for healthcare. Another one is Aptable. They provide you HIPAA guarantees and compliance, but you can check by yourself also their pricing. For example, it changes drastically because of the responsibilities and the guarantees they provide on compliance aspects. So again, even in a platform as a service where you deploy your code and execute your application, you are still responsible for implementing data security and user management. They are not going to implement that for you. You still need to implement this. Backend as a service approach then is the one that I described you before. So backend as a service covers those boxes. Cover partially the full application, but very precisely some of the aspects. So, for example, Chinoyo, Kinvi, TrueVault in US, we are providing, together with those guys, mainly from US, we are providing a clear set of APIs and solutions for user management for health data, and you can use any other cloud to implement the rest of your application. So the algorithms and artificial intelligence, blockchain, whatever you want to implement as an application, you can implement with the backend as a service, which will cover specific areas of your application, cover specific tasks. As I was saying, Firebase is the Google offering on the backend as a service. Again, Firebase is not HIPAA compliant, and again, therefore you shouldn't be using Firebase for your health projects, even in Europe. Even though they provide data location, the most important aspect again here is to understand is that they are not going to give you guarantees about your health sensitive data. So one of the things that GDPR stressed a lot is the contractual relationship between your service providers and yourself. You as a product owner, product offering, you need to make sure that all your service providers are GDPR compliant and that they provide you clear guarantees about the data that you are going to store on their services. So you shouldn't be using, for example, MailChimp for health sensitive data, because MailChimp is not designed to store this kind and to share this kind of data via mail. You should be using specific solutions designed for health purposes, which provide you specific guarantees about this. Because, for example, if Firebase is not HIPAA compliant, that means that they are not providing these kind of guarantees for your US market, and therefore that means that they are not providing the same kind of guarantees for European market. So specific solutions for that exist, and TrueVault, for example, is an alternative. Kinvi and again, our company worked on has as a mission to provide similar solutions. So there are also hybrid solutions, platforms, plugins, and frameworks. As I said, they can help a lot, and sometimes they can help you also to solve health data security and user management security. So I call them hybrid because really they provide different tips, different solutions for different problems, but somehow it's really hard to understand where they stop and where your responsibility starts. But it's worth checking. So again, some of those solutions are sorry, I'll try to move this. So some of them are Aptable, Datica, CloudMine, typically service providers for US, because as I was saying, HIPAA, the data protection law in US for healthcare, it's not only a data protection law, but it defines also data protection requirements. HIPAA defined clear requirements and clear guarantees that service provider need to provide to application developers, and therefore, since HIPAA defined those clear rules, entrepreneurs and innovators created very good services for health application development. So that's also potential, evolution in this market in Europe with the GDPR. Again, those services are worth checking and learning about what they provide, and they are specifically designed for HIPAA compliance. And then the last thing that I said about why GDPR is a good thing. Now, if you Google a bit, you can find different solutions out there that will provide you the knowledge and documentation about GDPR. So these solutions existed for a very long time about HIPAA. That's also, for example, when we as a company, we trained ourselves about the requirements for health data. So you can use them on the HIPAA training and management, but you can use also those similar alternatives for GDPR to manage your GDPR compliance in your company. So there are, for example, more than 40 GDPR organizational measures, so administrative tasks that you need to do in order to ensure compliance with GDPR. So knowledge sharing will be really great. So even we as a company, we are creating a lot of knowledge and guidelines for health specific issues and health application developers. So this will happen more and more in the future. So that's it. That was my short introduction about GDPR and HIPAA and this available solutions. You can find more on our website as guidelines and tips and tricks, and you can write me also at Jovan@Chinoyo if you have any specific questions about this. I think Thomas, we are going to answer to the questions later on, right? Because I see that there are quite many questions.
Yes, later on is now. We are
okay.
short on time, but I would like to. We have some questions now here. Yes, three of them.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, we need to check. So, but I think most important, I think for you guys watching, have you heard of project companies which had to stop because of GDPR? Do you know like projects which had to stop?
There have been some projects on Hacker News, for example. I was reading that they stopped delivering their services because they discovered that GDPR was really tough for them to overcome. I think that this is, I mean, there are some illegal activities that companies are doing, for example, in finding emails, finding contacts, which are illegal by definition, somehow, borderline by definition. And I think they are anyway outside of the health space. I don't think in the health space, companies that were legal before GDPR will be illegal after GDPR. I don't think the GDPR sets this different, for example, one of the most important aspects is the grounds for processing the data. So GDPR doesn't change those grounds, doesn't change the rights and the obligations that you need to do in order to process the data. You just need to collect the consent, or to have, you know, the other. There are 6 rights, 6 ways to reason grounds for processing health data. So there were 6 before GDPR, and there are 6 after GDPR. You just need to pay attention to that. So in digital health, I don't think, you know, this is going to change. Of course, companies need to be compliant, needs to be secure anyway.
Okay, and I think the last question, because then we have to check. Yes, thanks, Chris.
Okay.
Said thanks. Perfect. Someone asked, Derek, if we start a project with a chatbot, what do we need to consider if we have it e.g. on Facebook? GDPR is regulated. So I can show this again.
Yeah, for example, Facebook is very frequently used. I've seen different examples as a chat system. The problem with Facebook is, and that you as a developer always need to clarify, is which kind of data is going to transfer via Facebook. Facebook doesn't give you any guarantee about HIPAA compliance in US. Again, use this trick. Try to check if a solution is HIPAA compliant. If it's HIPAA compliant, then it means that it's also okay for health data in Europe if they provide you location of the data. So in Europe, location is very frequently a problem. Not in all countries, but in most of them, Germany and for example. So Facebook is not a suitable system to transfer health sensitive data or store health sensitive data, because it's not HIPAA compliant, it's not okay for US, it's not okay for Europe. It doesn't give you those guarantees that you need to have, like contractual guarantees.
Okay.
That's the main reason why not use. Overall, you know, Facebook is definitely secure. Nobody is going to hack Facebook that easily. But the problem about using it for healthcare is that there are so many other requirements that you need to consider.
Okay, so Jovan, the time is already up. So you know it's running very quickly. So
Yeah.
Thank you very much for your insights. And now for you who are watching or joining an offline meetup, what we are going to do now, we are going to switch the room. So you should have the link now and register for the room with Evelina. And we're having like 5 minutes break because I have to onboard her shortly to watch everything is working correct. So stay tuned and join the next session. And we will be back within 5, maximum 7 minutes. And thanks again, Jovan, for being with us. And yeah, talk to you later.
Yeah, so I'll be later here after the other talks to reply to other questions. So thank you for watching.